everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we'll be previewing and picking each game for week 2 of the NFL season. I'm happy to announce that yours truly, was the pick winner for week 1. I beat you and Shane by 1 game. So you can put imaginary crown back here in the background for me. I'm the picks champ for week 1, baby.
It's toxic. That's toxic. But congratulations, Dan. You get the crown for week 1. We'll see. We'll see about week 2. I might not be so bold this week, so I can get a crown.
Yeah. Do you want to just get into the predictions? I feel like we have a lot to talk about. There's some really good games this week too.
Yes, sir. We better get into it. A lot of games to go over.
All right. Let's get into this first game. It's going to be an exciting one. Tonight, Thursday night football, the Vikings going to Philadelphia. They're 6-point underdogs. The Vikings will be missing 2 interior offensive linemen in this one, including center Garrett Bradbury. And I feel like that alone is just kind of a disaster against this Eagles defensive line, as we saw in week 1 against the Patriots. They are as good a defensive line we've seen in a long time on paper, and they're feisty. So I just don't even see a world where this Vikings team can go into Philadelphia and win. Last week, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison did their thing, and it still wasn't enough against the Buccaneers. So even if Justin Jefferson and Addison go off this week, I don't know if it's going to be enough to beat this high-powered Eagles team. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings struggled against the Bucs team, who we all had, bottom of the barrel, in terms of ranking and everything. Yes, there might have been a little bit of Baker magic in there, but honestly, this Vikings team didn't look too hot. I don't expect them to improve much against the Eagles, who have an absolutely probably the best defense in the league, if we're being honest. From D line all the way back to secondary, they're just absolutely loaded. And then have one of the better offenses in all the NFL. And this Eagles team's just not slowing down. And this should be a pretty easy game. They can, pretty much be looking forward to next week. They're probably already prepping ahead of the Vikings, but you never know. The NFL is crazy, but I have the Eagles winning this one, pretty easily.
Yeah, and if it wasn't obvious of how I picked or how I talked earlier, I do pick the Eagles to win this one as well. I think Alexander Madison has a rough game. Like we said, I just don't think the run game is going to be there at all. Primetime Kirk, this could just be a disaster for the Vikings, and it sucks because they lost to the Buccaneers at home week 1, so they could start 0-2, and it's just unfortunate. But I guess it's kind of the opposite of last year, because they were kind of winning some really close games and had a better record than they probably should have. But yeah, I feel like the analysis in this game is just kind of hard, because I don't really see a world where the Vikings can take advantage of any part of this Eagles roster, to be honest.
No, yeah, just from top to bottom, this roster is just absolutely loaded. And I think, Jalen Hurts didn't even have that good of a game last week against the Patriots. But I kind of think this offense of the Eagles is due for some progression. And I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts are absolutely just going to go wild here on a primetime game. And I mean, other than Justin Jefferson, who's going to be guarded by, Darius Slay and probably, doubled, with some safety help over the top. I can't see Justin Jefferson doing enough to overtake this Eagles team. I can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one receiver that always has the chance of getting a 200-yard, 3-touchdown game. So I guess that's the Vikings' chance of winning this game. That's kind of how good the Eagles are, and just how good Jefferson is, and kind of how honestly just uneven this matchup is. I really do think the Eagles will kind of rout them. Unfortunately, because of that Bradbury injury, it's going to be rough with the offensive line.
Maybe if the Eagles pull a Staley and they just play man coverage against Justin Jefferson, just leave him alone on an island, then it might be a different story we're talking about. Maybe he can absolutely just torch the Eagles for 200 yards if that's the case. I highly doubt it. I think the Eagles are a little too smart to play man coverage against Justin Jefferson, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, if that's what their plan is. Maybe, if they pull Staley out of their note card and say, yeah, let's just leave, one of the best receivers one-on-one on an island against guys who clearly aren't as talented. Then
I'm
we'd have a different story. But I think the Eagles are a little too smart for that.
Yeah, Sean Desai coming over from Seattle. He's a very cover three heavy guy as well. So I do think you're fine. I think the Eagles defense is going to be pretty stout in this one. They might find a way to limit Jefferson. You're never going to be able to stop him. And I think Desai is already a better coach than Staley, and the Chargers could hire him as a head coach right now.
Absolutely, it'd be awesome. And then from a fantasy outlook, who's gonna be leading the Eagles backfield this week if Kenneth Gainwell can't go?
Yeah, so Kenneth Gainwell is out. Unfortunately, it looked like he was the one taking all the carries. I used half my fab on him in fantasy. I secured him, but yeah, I think it's going to be mostly DeAndre Swift. He didn't see really anything last week, but I think he is the one that kind of fits Kenny Gainwell's mold, and they'll use him in that role. And then Rashad Penny, who was a healthy scratch last week, which is unreal to me. I feel like he'll be kind of like the spell back, and then Boston Scott will be the goal line back like usual. So that's kind of how it will go. It's interesting. I'm not really. I mean, I guess you could start DeAndre Swift with Gainwell out, but it's scary, man.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, from a fantasy outlook, obviously you're starting Jalen Hurts, you're starting AJ Brown, you're starting Devontae Smith, no brainers. You're starting Justin Jefferson if you have him. I'm sure if you have Alexander Madison, you start him too. But some other questions for you, Dan, is are you starting the Eagles defense this week against the Vikings? And would you start Kirk Cousins against the Eagles defense?
I would definitely try not to start Kirk Cousins if I could. I feel like it's pretty easy to find another streaming option at quarterback, and the Eagles defense against the Vikings is tough. I like having two defenses and just taking advantage of whatever one has the easier matchup. Because if I had the Eagles defense, I would be looking at the waiver wire to see if I could pick up like the Giants versus the Cardinals or something like that. But it's not bad. Like you could start them if there's no other option.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. If you have the Eagles roster or their defense on your roster, I feel like you can probably get away. I'm sure Kirk Cousins will make a few mistakes and they'll get a couple picks. But if there is better streaming options, definitely look for that too.
And fire up AJ Brown and Devontae Smith because it's going to be fireworks in Philly. There's going to be a lot of touchdowns on this one. And Byron Murphy is more of a slot corner, so it'll be interesting to see who he's guarding. We'll get on to our first game of our 1 o'clock slate, and that is the Raiders at Bills. And I mean, if Josh Allen plays YOLO ball again, I think the Raiders could definitely spoil things in Buffalo and surprise some people because the Raiders are a competent team. Their defense obviously isn't great, but Jimmy G is a capable quarterback. He's going to keep the team afloat. And Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, they have weapons. So I think the Raiders are just kind of a slept on team. They're scrappy, and they're going to stay in game. So if Josh Allen just gives the game away like he's been doing last game and the last few games of last season, then the Raiders could surprise some people.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Raiders kind of play a brand of football, which we saw from week one, where it's not flashy, but they're definitely a scrappy team and they're gonna be in there in every single game. You kind of know what you're getting from Jimmy G. He's not gonna make very many mistakes, which is probably why they replaced Derek Carr with Jimmy G, because Derek Carr is constantly in his head, constantly, making dumb decisions, throwing picks, fumbling the ball. But Jimmy G is just kind of level headed. He's going to go out there. He's not going to do anything great, but he's going to do everything okay. And he's a good game manager. And so, that's good. That's going to keep the Raiders in games, not having those crucial mistakes. Because you're just not going to get those from Jimmy G. But with saying that, the Bills are definitely a much more talented roster with much more superpower on their side of the offense and defense. And I see this one kind of being a Josh Allen redemption game. Seems like he'll play YOLO ball one week. He'll come back and it'll just work out and he'll make some crazy throws, but they won't be interceptions next week. So I feel like this is going to be a Josh Allen redemption game. And I kind of see the Bills taking care of business pretty easy here. So I kind of see it a blowout, honestly. I think the Bills will win by 10 plus points. I think Josh Allen's going to go absolutely stupid. I think he's pissed off from the Monday night game versus the Jets, and I think he's just going to take off and go nuts and have one of his famous Josh Allen games.
I like it. Yeah. That is a good take. He it does kind of seem like after his bad games, he does just go crazy. And the games after, I'm gonna kind of meet in the middle with you. I'm gonna agree with you and pick the Bills. I'm gonna pick the Bills, but they are 9.5 point favorites, so I don't think that they cover that spread. I do think they'll probably win by like 7-ish. I don't think they end up winning by 10 plus. And I think this game can be just closer and chippier than it should be, but like home opener in Buffalo, the Bills can't lose this game. That would be a disaster. You'd have Stephon Diggs calling teams. It would be a mess in Buffalo. You don't want that.
Yeah, no, this is kind of a must-win game. You know, how poorly they executed and how they blew the game in New York. That this is a must-win game, and like you said, Stephon Diggs, you don't want to have to deal with that headache. So Josh Allen's got to go in there, play good football, not make those careless mistakes, and get this team a win.
Yeah, and for fantasy, obviously Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, you start with them every game. The Bills defense is good. It's going to be rough, but they're too good. They're going to feed them a lot. I had someone ask me today, if they should trade Devontae Adams for Jalen Waddle, and I just like that's just a little bit too overreactionary for me. I think 1 week against Patrick Surtain is a perfect time to be asking for Devontae Adams in a trade. So don't trade Devontae Adams away off that Broncos game. He's going to be just fine this year. You've got on the opposite side, you've got Stephon Diggs, who's just a must start every game. And then you got Dalton Kincaid, who's an interesting option in this game. The Raiders defense isn't too great. You did see Kincaid kind of implemented in that first game of his career. I think he was their second leading target getter. And against this Raiders defense, any of those targets could easily be a touchdown. I think he's a pretty decent start option if you're kind of desperate at tight end this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you really don't have anything better, or you have Mark Andrews who's questionable, or a Pat Fryermuth, and you have Dalton Kincaid, or you can pick him up off the waiver wire. Definitely get Dalton Kincaid. I mean, Holland, 4 of his 4 targets is pretty good, and I think that'll go up a little bit. I mean, that Jets defense is for real. So, I mean, that's a tough Jets defense. Technically, he didn't get the start. Dawson Knox was starting, but we're gonna start seeing Dalton Kincaid become pretty good. So he's a great streaming option. I definitely expect him against this Raiders defense, to have a little bit better of a game. I think he'll maybe have 5 catches, possibly sneak into the end zone, and that's all you want from a tight end. So if he can do that, that's a win in my books. And then yes, you're obviously starting all the star players in this game. Are you starting the Bills defense versus the Raiders?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't really think the Raiders would score more than 20 points. So I do think the Bills defense is a good play.
Also, what about Jacoby Myers?
That one's hard with the concussion. I think I'm not starting him. I think you're fine to pick him up and keep him on your bench. I just don't know if he's even going to play with that concussion. It was kind of weird. Like no one even talked about it after, and his eyes were like rolling in the back of his head. So it was a weird situation, and like no one even gave an update after. So hopefully he's okay. But I don't think I'm starting him this week. I think he's a good start though. In other weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Now, should we move on to the next game?
Yeah, let's get on to our next 1 o'clock game. The Baltimore Ravens are going to go into Cincinnati and play the Bengals. The Bengals are 3.5 point home favorites. And this is an interesting one, man. I feel like this is one of the games this week that it's kind of a pick 'em. It's really hard to pick. The Bengals obviously looked rough last week. I'm not too worried about it. It happened last year as well. They kind of like to start slow, but I'm not worried about it. Joe Burrow will bounce back. Will he bounce back this week? Is he fully healthy right now? That's kind of what's tough to call. And I think this game is going to be incredibly close. The Ravens looked pretty good last week. Obviously, Todd Monken's first game with them. There's going to be some learning curves. The Texans defense it's going to be stout this year. So I feel like people are kind of just not ready for that, but it's going to be good. So I think that Ravens performance was better than what people are putting on, and I don't know who to pick for this game. I'm gonna let you talk about this one.
Yeah, I was going back and forth on it for a while. I mean, because this is a division game, they're always going to play each other closer and harder than you think. And then even if I was thinking about last year when it was the game for the playoff, well, to go to the playoffs and in the playoffs, and it was Tyler Huntley starting, and they were in it. They were in it till the end. They were competing with Joe Burrow and a fully healthy Bengals team without Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson was definitely a little, there's little shaky moments in his week 1 game. Joe Burrow looked terrible. And so, I mean, I was going back and forth, scratching my head. It was hard to decide. But I do think the Bengals, again, are in for a little bit of a redemption. They got embarrassed by the Browns. And I feel like, for the division, this is kind of a must win for the Bengals. I know it's only week 2, but it's hard to go out there and lose 2 division games back to back. And so in my head, I was just like, the Bengals are going to come out. They're going to play with some fire. They got embarrassed last week. And so I'm going to go, it's going to be a close game. But I think the Bengals will end up winning by about, 3 points. I think they'll kick a field goal and win. I think it's going to go literally down to the wire. And whoever ends with the ball last is probably who's going to win. And I think I have confidence in Joe Burrow. And I think he's going to bounce back, and I think they'll have the ball last, and I think they'll go down there and kick a field goal and win. But it's going to be a scrappy, tough game.
Yeah, not to copycat your analysis, but not gonna lie, like that's exactly how I'm feeling. I just think it's gonna be the last team that has the ball wins. I see a Justin Tucker, Evan McPherson game winner in this one, and for the same reason as you, I'm gonna pick the Bengals because they what did they get, a goose egg last week? 0 points. You can't start the season off
And
two
score a
weeks
touchdown.
that bad. Like at home in Cincinnati, the fans are gonna be wanting fireworks after that contract Burrow got. You got to win this game. And as much as I respect the Ravens, like I think this game is going to be so close, it could easily go either way. I think the Bengals are going to win this one by 3, barely.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough, scrappy one. And in fantasy terms, what are we doing with the Ravens running backs? Where's your head at?
Justice Hill's the one I would want for sure. I don't really think, I think we know what Gus Edwards is. I think the Ravens do too. So I think that they're going to try to get Justice Hill going and start him and try to get him hot because they're going to try to feed him. So I think Justice Hill is the one to target in fantasy. And on the Bengals side, start Mixon, start Chase, start Higgins. Don't worry about Higgins. Don't sell Higgins low
Say,
either.
what about that 0 point
Yeah,
game? We're
don't
pissed.
don't don't overreact and trade Higgins for someone that was drafted in the 10th round. Just let Higgins do his thing because he's going to be awesome this year as well. So, yeah, start all those Bengals options as always. And I Justice Hill's a fine flex play, but the Bengals defense is really good. So I would prefer for it not to be this week because the Bengals defense is so good.
Yeah, Justice Hill did get in the end zone twice last week, which was pretty impressive. Obviously, I've always been a little scared and weary of Ravens running backs. But if Justice Hill can get in the end zone, I think he's a decent flex option play. So, and he does seem to be the one. I wouldn't worry too much about Gus Edwards.
Would you start Zay Flowers in the flex against the Bengals?
If you're in a 12-man league and noticing how my bench depth and my flexes, I would start Zay Flowers. Coming off of a 10 target game, that's the volume I like to see, and he was catching everything. And his targets weren't super deep; they were kind of a mixture of everything. And so if he's able to get 6-7 targets, I like the production he's going to get, and I would definitely start him.
Yeah, if Mark Andrews doesn't go, I think he's a start no matter what. And then if Mark Andrews goes, I think if I could, I prefer to sit him this week and kind of see how it plays out. But I wouldn't mind starting him. I'm kind of in the same spot as you. He could definitely start on my team. I could use him. So we'll get on to our next game. It's going to be a very interesting one in the NFC playoff picture. The Seahawks go to Detroit and play the Lions, who are 5.5-point home favorites. And this is going to be a really fun one, man. I feel like it's going to be an electric offensive matchup. Hopefully the Seahawks can kind of bounce back from their terrible week 1 against the Rams. I don't know what that was. I want to just erase that out of my memory and give Gino one more chance with this beautiful wide receiver trio to put up some points against the Lions. And on the opposite side, like the Lions defense does look better against the Chiefs. Like they looked fine. Aiden Hutchinson's obviously gonna like a real star. He's going to be a face of the NFL for a while. He's really awesome. And I just think this Lions defense is a little more stout. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming over and kind of bringing a new mentality. I do think that this Lions defense could give Gino troubles 2 weeks in a row. And that could be bad for Seahawks fans, who I picked to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy. You threw out an early, sleeper prediction for the Seahawks, and they definitely didn't live up to expectations. But I don't know if we should hit the panic button quite yet on the Seahawks. We saw the Bengals, we saw the Chiefs, we saw the Bills, we saw the Chargers, we saw a whole bunch of teams, lay a goose egg this week. But man, that was a piss poor performance, and they were playing Puka Nacua as wide receiver 1. So I mean, trying to scratch my head on that. I don't know why that happened. but they definitely laid a goose egg out there, and still, I think we're all trying to figure out why. Um, I do expect a bounce back game. There's no way they can play worse. I should say. You can't really duplicate that and play any worse. But however, Lions are my sweetheart team. These guys, I'm a big Dan Campbell fan. I'm a big Ben Johnson fan. I absolutely love this offense. I love the defense. And week one, they showed it against Kansas City. And so I expect them to come in here. And I don't know if it'll be a complete blowout, but I kind of have them as like a 5 point spread. I kind of like where it's at right now. And I think they'll go in there and Seahawks are coming, to Detroit. And I think the Lions will take care of business. And I think we'll see like a bigger game from Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I do think the Seahawks will be more competitive this week. They'll kind of regress to the mean because they were just so bad last week. I think they'll kind of come out there and compete in Detroit. But in the end, I do think that this new ground and pound running style that they have with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs as well, I think they're just going to grind out this win over the Seahawks and have the superior defense and especially offensive line. I think the offensive line could be a big mismatch. And something I didn't even mention, I feel stupid for not mentioning it. Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross are both questionable for this game, the two tackles for the Seahawks. So that is obviously like game changing. If they can't play. If the Seahawks can't have their two tackles, then it's over. But yeah, I think this game will be more competitive, but the Lions are going to win at home.
Yeah, I think they'll go in there and they'll take care of business. And Jahmyr Gibbs for fantasy owners, don't hit the panic button. He actually was very productive with all of his touches. He played a really good game. He looked the part. He was getting the receiving looks. And Dan Campbell said out loud is we're gonna slowly involve him more into the offense. It's just week one. And I kind of feel like that's the same with like Bijan. He didn't get 25 touches like we all thought, but he still was productive out there, and they'll continue to become, more volatile to the game plan. But I'm excited to see this Detroit run game week two, and I think their running backs are both going to go crazy. So I think start both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep. Start Jahmyr Gibbs, start David Montgomery. And speaking of Jahmyr Gibbs, he was one trip away from having a huge fantasy week, and no one would be talking negatively about him. He was literally a trip away from a touchdown. No one was going to touch him. So don't worry about Jahmyr Gibbs at all. I'm really excited about him. Anything else you want to talk about in this game? I think you kind of start the Seahawks receivers because you have to. You drafted them.
Are you starting Smith and Jigba?
Not him. I don't think I'd start Smith and Jigba. I would start Lockett, Metcalf, Kenneth
Okay.
Walker. Those three. Don't start Charbonnet or Smith and Jigba yet. And then the Lions, I would start Montgomery, Gibbs, and
What do
Amara.
we what do we think about Goff? Is he fantasy relevant? Would you be rostering him?
Yeah, I feel like especially in this game, he showed last against the Chiefs. He's awesome. I feel like he's a perfect streaming quarterback. You could trust him every week to get you around 20 points. So I definitely am fine starting Goff.
Yeah, I love it. All right, let's move on to the next one.
And I would much rather start him than Geno too in this game.
Yeah, for sure. I like Goff more than Geno this year. I do.
All right, we'll move on to the next game. It is the Indianapolis Colts, who are 1 point road favorites in Houston against the Texans, which is a little interesting to me. But Anthony Richardson looked awesome last week for the Colts against the Jaguars. I'm really excited for Ant. Excited to see what he can do in his second week with Shane Steichen. It's a really exciting duo. And D'Amico Ryans is going to have a good scheme against him. He's a really, really, really brilliant defensive coordinator, and he's going to make it tough on Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. So this is going to be interesting. I don't really know how it's going to play out, but I will say I don't think the Texans should be home underdogs in this game. I feel like it's close enough to where they should at least be 1 point favorites, and I am going to take the Texans just because I don't really get that. I think I might put some money on it too. I think CJ Stroud was a little bit better of a prospect than Anthony Richardson too, and people might be forgetting that because of week one. But yeah, I think the Texans are just kind of better in the Colts in every category other than maybe offensive line. So I don't know if Vegas is kind of missing this one or I'm just completely off, but I think the Texans defense is going to be really competitive enough to where Anthony Richardson doesn't give him too much of fits. And I think CJ Stroud will finally have a good game in his first NFL game, not against a really, really good defense.
I'm so excited for this game. The battle of the rookie quarterbacks right here is just exciting. I definitely I think you should definitely be tuned in for this one. It's going to be super fun. And I was struggling who to pick on this one. I was kind of going back and forth. I think it's going to be, I mean, what were the Colts 1 point favorites? Because
Yep.
I think it's going to be just extremely close. I was going back and forth, but I kind of like the way Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen looked out there in week one, and I'm kind of going to ride that train. And I think the Colts defense is going to go out there. I mean, I don't feel like they're an elite defense, but I feel like they're a defense that makes plays. And I feel like they'll have a defensive touchdown somehow, whether it's a fumble, a pick six, a return touchdown, a special teams. I feel like the Colts will do something like that. And I have the Colts just winning this one in a tight race. But it's going to be ultra exciting, and I'm excited. I think you should start Anthony Richardson if you have him against the Texans defense. I think that'll be a fun little, if you don't have one of the top quarterbacks and you're kind of waiver wiring. I mean, you really shouldn't be waiver wiring quarterbacks, but if you kind of need a streaming option, or Aaron Rodgers was your quarterback and he got hurt, and you have Anthony Richardson, play Anthony Richardson. I think he'll be a fun play this week.
Yeah, if you drafted Anthony Richardson as your backup and there's someone you're kind of debating on, I would start Anthony Richardson. He's going to be electric. He always has the upside to get a rushing touchdown. Really exciting start. Zach Moss, who is going to come in and replace Deion Jackson, who had a forgettable week one to say the least. And Evan Hull is on IR, so it's going to be Zach Moss's backfield. So I would start him. And I think Michael Pittman's going to be a good option in fantasy this year. I really do think he's going to be really solid. I tried to draft him as much as possible because his ADP was incredibly low. And on the Texans, start Dameon Pierce.
I'm gonna throw this one out. If you're struggling for a flex option, look for Nico Collins. He had 11 targets last week against a tough Baltimore team. He only caught 6 of them. It seems like he's CJ Stroud's favorite target. He's a big body. He could definitely catch a touchdown in this one. So I'm gonna throw this out here. And if you're looking for a deep, you know, waiver wire ad, a sleeper flex option, look at Nico Collins. 11 targets is nothing to joke about, and I think he's definitely in for some progression on those catches where he only had 6 for 80 yards. I think we could see, maybe 7, 8 catches and with a touchdown. So look out for Nico Collins in your fantasy league.
Yeah, a lot of things to look out for in this game. It kind of feels like it's the Texans' real first game because their first game was in Baltimore. It's just a terrible environment to play. But yeah, Nico Collins, Tank Dell will be fun to see how that plays out. And yeah, it'll be fun to watch this game because it's the first game we picked differently. We'll get on to our next game. It is the Bears who go into Tampa to play the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are 2.5-point favorites. Buccaneers went into Minnesota last week, looked electric. The defense was stout. The defense was playing like it had Tom Brady on the other side of the field. It was playing really good, and their secondary is awesome. I don't really see Justin Fields prevailing and getting past that secondary or run defense, which is pretty stout for the Buccaneers as well, and schemed up pretty well. I think Justin Fields and the Bears were the biggest negative of week one, and it's unfortunate even saying it. It is because he's so fun, but man, he's looking rough. The Bears are looking rough, and I think they're in for Caleb Williams, man, and it's sad.
It is sad. I had so many high expectations for Justin Fields. And maybe we're hitting the panic button too early on him. It was week one, but man, he did not fit the part. The Bears have the offensive weapons to be good. The Bears kind of have that culture of having a good defense, and no one looked good out there. And maybe it is, maybe we're not, overreacting for hitting the panic button, but it looked bad. And on the other side of the field, I absolutely, the Bucks, who are one of our lowest rated teams, I'm riding with Baker Magic right here. Give me Baker Magic winning this game. I think the Buccaneers are going to go on a few game streak and be relevant, and I think it carries on to week 2. And just give me the stock in Baker right now. He's looking good.
I'm smiling because give me Baker and the Bucks to start 2-0 as well. I think it's a beautiful thing. Ryan Fitzmagic 2.0, like you said last episode. I feel like it's a perfect comparison. And I remember that one season that he had an incredible week one, and he was wearing like the shades and stuff in the locker room after the game. It's literally the same exact vibes with Baker Mayfield. Really exciting. I'm excited to see how long the Buccaneers can keep it up. Hopefully, I guess honestly, just start Evans and Godwin. They're startable right now. Baker's playing good. I would say start Rachaad White because the Bears defense was so bad, and I think Rachaad White will have a good game in the receiving game this week too.
Absolutely. Rashad White was definitely underwhelming last week. I think he'll definitely have a big bounce back week. But on the Bears side of the ball, I mean, you're gonna have to start DJ Moore if you have him. You're banking on that upside. You kind of have to do that. But I mean, with the running backs and the other wide receivers, are you starting anyone?
No, no, I'm not. If I'm really desperate, I could start Khalil Herbert, but like Roshan Johnson, 2 touchdowns last week. They have Deontay Foreman too. No, I don't think I'd want to start anyone on this team right now other than DJ Moore.
Sadly, I am an owner of Khalil Herbert, and I'm going in favor of Nico Collins this week over him. I'm not confident right now in the Bears. I do have DJ Moore in my league, and I kind of forced to start him, so I don't really have another option. But yeah, I think for the foreseeable future right now, stay away, and especially Tampa's defense looked really good last week. Stay away from starting Bears if you can. I don't think it's a good play.
Yeah, that's the thing. Vita Vea in that running game, it's going to be tough for the Bears. And I know the Bears have a different running style with Justin Fields, but still, it's going to be tough to get theirs against this Buccaneers team in Tampa. We'll get on to our next game, and it's going to be an electric one. Could be a preview of the AFC Championship. Could totally see that. Getting a gut feeling for the Jaguars at home. The crowd is going to be rocking. I don't really know why. It's hard to pick the Chiefs to start 0-2. That's really hard to do. That hasn't happened since the 99 Broncos after they lost John Elway. So it's going to be it's hard to pick because like I get gut feelings for the Jaguars, but picking against Mahomes, coming off a Super Bowl, it's tough. People are saying Travis Kelce's playing. I think there's a quiet chance that he doesn't play. No one's really talking about it right now. So I don't know what's going on with him. Hopefully he does play. That changes things for sure. Chris Jones is back. I do think that Trevor, Calvin Ridley looked like the fastest player the NFL has seen since Tyreek Hill. I think this Jaguars team could be really electric and give the Chiefs defense a lot of fits. Can the Chiefs receivers overcome that and score in Jacksonville? It's hard. If Travis Kelce is there, I think they can. So that's what makes this hard to predict.
No, in the wise words of Devonte Adams, he ain't there yet. I'm not gonna go against Mahomes. I think Travis Kelce will find his way into the game. If he doesn't, that does change things substantially because they need just one person to catch for Mahomes. As long as he's got one person that can catch a ball competently, they're just fine. Chris Jones is back. That's going to improve the defense significantly. And without anyone even catching a pass, Mahomes stayed in there against a really tough Lions team. So if Kelsey's back, give me the Chiefs all day long. I'm not going to bet against Mahomes. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is there yet. I don't think he's going to be able to go out there and compete with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is just too much of an alien to go back-to-back losses. I think the Chiefs are going to go in there to Jacksonville and just take care of business. I think they'll do it with or without Kelsey. In my honest opinion, I think he's too much of an alien. He's not going to let it happen.
That's the thing that's making this like so hard for me. Like I've been juggling this for way too long. I don't know what it is. It's in my mind. It's in my head. Trevor Lawrence is going to win this game for the Jaguars. Calvin Ridley's going to have a long touchdown in the fourth quarter, and they're going to win. So give me the Jaguars on this one. They're 3.5-point underdogs. I think they'll win by 6, maybe. Like I think they can win this game at home. I think the stadium's going to be rocking. So I'm excited for this one.
Oh man, it's gonna be a shootout. It's gonna be fun.
Playoff rematch of last year, probably a playoff preview for the next decade. And we'll get into our next game, which honestly has some NFC playoff implications. Packers are going into Atlanta and playing the Falcons, and the Packers are 1-point road favorites as well. So that's a little bit interesting. I don't know. I think Jordan Love is a really good quarterback. I've loved him since Utah State. I thought he looked really solid week 1. He's just a really cool, collected quarterback. Love him. Hopefully Christian Watson gets back. That'll be kind of a big impact in this game, actually. I feel like Christian Watson could be the X factor that puts the Packers on top for me, honestly. Romeo Doubs was awesome last week. Aaron Jones looked electric. And then the Falcons, you've got Bijan Robinson, who looks like LaDainian Tomlinson. as a rookie in his first game ever, so he's pretty insane. You love that. You want to see more from Ritter, but when you have LaDainian Tomlinson and Tyler Algier in your backfield, it's not bad when you can just beat teams by 2 touchdowns running the ball every play too. So it's going to be interesting. I do want to take the Falcons at home because I feel like their defense, adding Jesse Bates, is a little underrated as well.
Yeah, I really like that. This one was one I've been struggling with too. I think it's going to be really close. They do play different brands of football. And I originally had the Packers winning this game, but I'm going to change my mind, and I'm actually going to go the Falcons. The way they looked last week, they're not a super high powered offense. They're going to be throwing the ball, but like you said, you got LaDainian Tomlinson and Tyler Algier in the backfield. So, and I think that's enough right now to beat the Packers. I really like Jordan Love. I really like the way they played week 1 against the Bears, but this Atlanta defense looks pretty good. And it's just a mean ground and pound attack. And I think the Falcons will. I changed my mind from the Packers to the Falcons, but I think the Falcons will win this game in a close game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the Falcons as well. I think Arthur Smith kind of has some tricks up his sleeves. I think not using London and Pitts at all in week 1. I think that he will scheme up some good plays for London and Pitts this week and against the Packers. I just think the Packers, as good as their defense is, they're gonna have a hard time stopping this versatile offense because if you commit too hard on Bijan and Tyler Algier, then you've got Kyle Pitts and Drake London who are kind of just freaks in their own rights. Like this team is honestly loaded. If they had a quarterback, like a real quarterback, they could be really dangerous contenders. But yeah, I'm going to take the Falcons too, just for those weapons. I think it's going to be hard to game plan against. It's kind of a big jump up from the Bears last week on both sides of the ball. So I do think the Falcons, they're a team that surprised me in week 1, I'll be honest, and I'm going to ride with them this week over the Packers.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And start both Bijan and start Tyler Algier in fantasy. I think you can feel comfortable. It's kind of giving me remnants of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. There's 2 quality running backs in the same backfield that can be highly productive. So, start both Falcons running backs. I don't think they'll disappoint you this week.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast and someone was asking if they should start both Tyler Algier and Bijan on their teams. They drafted both. And I think that if you just drafted both of those running backs, you might have won your fantasy league because I think both of them can be really productive every week, the way that this offense is going to be run by Arthur.
100%. Is there anyone on the Packers offense that you're feeling comfortable starting this week?
Yeah, I'm definitely starting Aaron Jones, starting Christian Watson, and then Dobbs is an interesting flex play, especially if Watson doesn't play. I think he's a flex lock for Dobbs. If Watson plays, I think he's a desperate flex play. And Jordan Love could be played. The Falcons defense is slept on. Like I think Jesse Bates is in for another pick. AJ Terrell's there. Clark Phillips. They've got a really good defense. It's improved, and I think the Packers being 1-point favorites on the road is a little crazy to me.
Yeah, for sure. I think just the style and the brand of football, I think is just going to be a totally, completely new challenge and a struggle for the Packers. And then from a fantasy aspect, of course, start Aaron Jones, start Christian Watson. Do you feel confident starting Kyle Pitts this week? That's a real question.
No, I'm never starting Kyle Pitts probably ever again if I drafted him. No.
Kyle Pitts, I think it was. I mean, I can't help but want to say, we were so high on him in the offseason. We tried to talk him up, but really when it came draft season, I was too scared to press the draft button. And I'm glad I was. I couldn't get my mind to do it. And I know you were the exact same way. And I am grateful for that. I'm grateful that my gut, stepped in and just, it wouldn't let me pick on him because I know he fell late. I think he fell 8th or 9th round in our fantasy draft. And, we couldn't hit the button on him. And I'm grateful because at this point, I'm kind of calling Kyle Pitts a bust.
Yeah, he was really, really falling down our draft board the closer it got to drafts. We were just getting too scared off on that pick. Same with London. And it looks like we were right just because of how this offense is ran. With Arthur Smith, let's get into a really, really exciting game. It's an interesting matchup. The Chargers are going to go into Nashville and play the Titans, who are 3-point underdogs. The Chargers are 3-point favorites in this one. And before I let you talk about this one, it's going to be really interesting to see how how this game is kind of just played by the coaches. Like I think Kellen Moore is going to have a kind of a coming out party in this one because he showed how good he can be as a run game coordinator in week 1. And I think with all that tape on the run game that the Titans are kind of forced to watch, I think he's just going to unleash that the 3 receivers, Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. And I think the Chargers are going to have a really good passing attack in this game. And the Titans let me down last week, man. The defense looked bad. Tannehill looked terrible. And I think the Chargers will probably have a hard time running against the Titans, who are the number 1 run defense in the NFL too. So, yeah, I just think Kellen Moore is going to kind of drop a master class passing game for this Herbert offense.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because this is a completely different, style of football that Mike Vrabel plays than Mike McDaniels. I mean, it's completely polar opposite, and so for that reason, me being a Chargers fan, I'm kind of a little bit disappointed we're not playing a more pass heavy attack team, just because I'd like to see how the Chargers bounce back from last week. But now they're playing a completely different style of football. You have to worry about Derrick Henry coming downhill. And that's kind of about it. I don't think you're too scared by Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball. He looked horrible. The defense was kind of underwhelming, but you still have Jeffrey Simmons on that defensive line, and like you said, the number 1 run defense. So it's going to be interesting. I definitely have the Chargers beating them, especially after that sour taste they have in their mouth from last week. I think Kellen Moore will come out here, like you said, have a fantastic game plan. And Brandon Staley better have something, for Derrick Henry cooked up, and he better look good because he's going to be on the hot seat all year long, and he better not go 0-2. But with that said, I still think Derrick Henry. I think the Chargers will beat the Titans pretty easily, but I think Derrick Henry is going to have himself a game, and I think he'll probably run for 120 yards and maybe a score or 2 against the Chargers.
Yeah, the way this Chargers run defense has looked the last few years, I think that's a lock for Derrick Henry to have a day. I don't think it's going to be enough though. The way the Titans looked last week, it was just really disappointing to me. Their offensive line did look better than expected, which is good. Swarovski looks like he's going to be a star, so that's awesome. The Titans could bounce back if Ryan Tannehill plays a decent brand of football, but he's going to have to show it because that week 1 performance was just pathetic, honestly. And yeah, I think the Chargers are too good of a team, so I think they're coming off a loss too. So I just think the Chargers are going to be pissed off and bounce back.
Yeah, and like I said, they better. And everyone's kind of on the hot seat. This is kind of the year. They have the most money invested in their defense in the entire NFL. The Chargers, better come out here firing and look pretty good, pretty fast. But yeah, I think they will come in here. I think their offense will just be a little bit too overwhelming for Tennessee to keep up with, and ultimately they'll come out on top, I think, pretty easily. But yeah, I have a gut feeling Derrick Henry is just going to go absolutely berserk in this game, though. It won't be enough, but he's going to go crazy. So be excited if you got Derrick Henry on your fantasy team.
Yeah, and something to keep an eye on for fantasy is Austin Eckler has been a little limited, I guess, a little questionable, and same with DeAndre Hopkins as well. They're both kind of banged up from week 1, so it's definitely something to monitor. I think Treylon Burks is a good option. I'm personally starting him this week in the flex. I think without Hopkins, I think he'll be good, but without Hopkins, he'd be awesome. And obviously for the Chargers, you start Eckler, you start Keenan, you could probably start Mike Williams on the flex. You could consider starting Quentin Johnston in a really deep league because I think they're going to be throwing it a lot. And you got to start Eckler, and you could probably start Joshua Kelly with or without Eckler because they're going to be splitting a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Kelly had 16 carries last week for 91 yards and a touchdown. So Kellen Moore definitely transformed this run defense, this run offense. And they were, I think they had the best percentage of what was the stat? It was the highest quality of conversion rate. It was like since the last 20 years. So, I mean, it was like 100% running efficiency. Which is like, it hasn't happened since like the 2004 Saints or something crazy like that. So Kellen Moore is, he's a guru. He is an offensive minded guru. And I think, Josh Kelly, especially if Austin Eckler is banged up. I tried to get him in fantasy. Didn't realize somebody else would way outbid me for him. But yeah, Josh Kelly is definitely, a flex play this week.
We'll get on to our next game. The 49ers are going to go into LA and play the Rams, and the Niners are 8-point road favorites. Not too big of a surprise there. They looked awesome last week, man. They just absolutely routed the Steelers in Pittsburgh. It was pretty embarrassing, honestly. Their defense looked like a top defense, and the Steelers looked awesome. Their offense looked like it was the Super Bowl winning offense a few years ago. Puka Nakua stepped into that Cooper Kupp role and literally didn't take a step down. Like, he was awesome. He filled right in and filled in awesomely. I think Puka Nakua is in for a big week this week. I think Tutu Atwell's in for another fun week. I think that's a really fun receiving duo. Just a lot of young guys in there that Stafford just kind of throwing to. And Stafford's playing good football right now. He's slinging it. So we'll see how long that lasts for. But the Rams team could play spoiler if they're firing on all cylinders. But this Niners team is just kind of too good.
Yeah, this is I'll be honest, I'm not going to talk a lot about this one. The 49ers are going to set the Rams straight. They're going to bring them back down to earth and kind of show them how good their roster actually is. And start everyone on the 49ers, start McCaffrey, start Ayuk, start Kittle. And I mean, Kittle was kind of, disappointing last week, but I think you have to start everyone. Start Debo. And I think this just 49ers team is just already Super Bowl contention. They look fantastic. Kyle Shanahan's the biggest guru in the NFL in terms of coach. And I think they'll absolutely embarrass the Rams this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Niners as well. Not much to say on it, but it's got to be the Niners in LA.
Yes, sir.
We'll get on to the next game. It's Giants are going into Arizona to play the Josh Dobbs and the Cardinals. The Giants are 5.5-point road favorites, and I think that's accurate. I think they're going to be a little bit pissed off after that week one terrible performance. I think Brian Dable will have them playing better. They're still going to have their heads down a little bit after getting embarrassed by a division rival like that. But I don't think they could lose to this Cardinals team, who's the worst roster in the NFL. Josh Dobbs will do his thing to keep his players in it, but ultimately, I think the Giants team surely is just too good for this Cardinals team. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, you think, and Dayball, he's gonna bounce back. I mean, they again laid a goose egg. The Giants looked absolutely terrible. I mean, I didn't expect them to win, but they shouldn't have been beaten by 40 points. I mean, that was embarrassing. So they got to come, and take care of business against the Cardinals, who are probably the worst roster in the NFL. And I think they will. I think they'll end up beating the Cardinals by, honestly, 2 touchdowns. I think Daniel Jones is going to have a good game. I think Saquon's going to go off. So I'm excited to see this Giants team bounce back in week 2.
Yep. Start the Giants defense. Probably start the Cardinals defense, and start all the options, because there's not much going to be going on in this game. We'll get on to the next one, which is an awesome matchup. Unfortunately, would have been a little bit more awesome if Aaron Rodgers was in this game. It would have been an all-time matchup. But 2 of the best rosters in the NFL going at it. The Jets are going to go into Dallas and play the Cowboys, who are 9-point home favorites. And that Cowboys defense in week 1 was just incredible. I love the ground and pound duo of Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. I think it's going to be a good identity for this team moving forward. This Jets team is going to have a good identity, just defense and running the ball. And I think that running back duo can do some good things. But in this matchup against the Cowboys, I think this Cowboys defense is just going to be a little bit too overwhelming. They've got too much weapons. I think the Cowboys are going to be kind of firing on all cylinders in their home opener.
Yeah, I mean, both electric teams. I mean, both the rosters are absolutely stacked. But I mean, the way that Cowboys team just looked absolutely insane. And the quarterback play on the Jets it's not Aaron Rodgers out there anymore. So I mean, this game would have been talked about a little differently through my perspective if Rodgers was there. But I think the Cowboys are absolutely going to go in there and demolish the Jets offense. I think Micah Parsons might have 5 sacks. I think Trayvon Diggs might have 2 interceptions for touchdowns. And so I think ultimately the defense for the Cowboys is absolutely just going to roll over the Jets offense. I think the Jets defense will keep the offense, will keep the score close. But I think, how we saw the Cowboys defense play last week. They can score. The special teams can score. they don't need their offense to perform that well to win. And I think they'll go in there and they'll handle the Jets pretty easily.
Yeah, I think you could say outside of the 49ers, these might be the two best defenses in the NFL right now, and the Browns. But yeah, it's going to be an awesome matchup. Like you said, the Jets will be kind of in this game. They can't be blown out because of just how good this defense is. They're going to keep them in most games this season. In the playoff hunt, which is crazy. Their defense is incredible. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to watch that secondary. Quinnen Williams go to work. He's going to have an awesome season. So the Jets will keep it somewhat close, but this Cowboys offense is going to be explosive at home. I think it's kind of outmatched at this point.
And I'm on the opinion of the Jets should definitely go out and sign a veteran quarterback. I mean, this team is just too good to let a season, get wasted with poor quarterback play. And so if they're able to go out and talk Philip Rivers out of retirement, or talk a competent quarterback that can win games, or even trade, I mean, I think this team is just too talented to waste a season, with poor quarterback play. You can't have a guy who's going to go out there, make stupid decisions, and embarrass this good of a team. So I think they'd be dumb to not go and try and talk one of these better quarterbacks out of retirement, or make a play for a trade or something. I think they'd be crazy not to. This team's just too good right now.
Yeah, if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm calling Washington 100% and doing whatever it takes to get Jacoby Brissett. I think he'd be a perfect quarterback for this team. He could easily lead this team to the playoffs. We'll get on to our next game. It's the Commanders who are going to go into Denver and play the Broncos. The Broncos are 3.5-point favorites, and both these teams looked a little bit disappointing compared to expectation in week one. I think Jerry Jeudy coming back will be a very big boost for the Broncos. It kind of was an obvious hole in their offense and team last week. I sound silly, but I think they genuinely would have easily won that game with Jeudy. He's a big piece in that offense, and they were really missing him. They have no explosiveness without him. So I think Jeudy will be the game changer. The Washington's awesome. They have a good, solid defense, a good, solid defensive line. Sam Howell's a good prospect. He didn't look great in week one, but him and Jahan Dotson have a good connection. I could see, especially Dotson have a good game. I think Surtain's going to be guarding Terry McLaurin mostly, but I think Dotson will have a pretty good game with Sam Howell. Brian Robinson will have a good game. I think this game can be pretty competitive, but I do think the Broncos pull this one out. Coming off that week one home loss, I don't think they could lose their second game at home with Sean Payton.
Yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy is the X factor in this game. If he's good, he's healthy, he's going to be playing Jerry Jeudy football. I think that's what's going to ultimately get the Broncos over the top. And I think the Broncos will win too. I think that defense is going to give Sam Howell a real run for his money. And and I think the Broncos defense will humble Sam Howell with just how good they are. But yeah, I have the Broncos kind of coming in here. I think Russ is going to play some good football this week, and I think they'll kind of roll over the. I wanted to say Redskins, but Commanders. It's still engraved in my head.
Could be, but
Or even the football team. But yeah, I think they'll roll over the Commanders with ease this week.
yeah, change their name to anything other than the Commanders. I don't care what it is, just not the Commanders. But yeah, Sam Howell probably will have a pretty tough time against this defense. It's going to be an interesting game. I think Javonte Williams could do some special things. I think he could actually have a pretty big game. The Washington defense was a little soft against James Conner last week. So interesting matchup, but I think the Broncos will come out on top. We'll get into our Sunday night football matchup. The Dolphins are going into New England to play the Patriots, and the Dolphins are 3.5-point road favorites. And Tua has won 4 games in a row versus Bill Belichick's Patriots. It's a pretty impressive stat, and I absolutely loved what I saw from both of these teams in week one. I think we're in for an awesome Sunday night football game. And man, let's talk about the Dolphins first, because week one, they just fired on all cylinders on offense. They looked awesome. There were some holes on defense for sure. Some things to clean up. Going on the Patriots, Mac Jones looked awesome in week one as well. I thought he looked really efficient against a really good Eagles defense. I'm really excited to see how he does for the Patriots. I think they can be really competitive this year. So I think this is going to be a really competitive game. Everyone's going to be kind of riding on that Dolphins hype train of just playing like a perfect game in week one offensively. But I do think this will be a close game. But yeah, that Dolphins offense, Tyreek, Waddle, too, it's hard to game plan against, man, even if you're Bill Belichick.
Yeah, for sure. But I definitely think there is a substantial skill gap between the Chargers and the Patriots defense. It's definitely going to be a lot more challenging for Tua. They're definitely not going to be leaving Tyreek on an island this week, the Patriots. And it's going to be a scrappy game. And the Dolphins do always, for whatever reason, play the Patriots well. It's just like in their DNA, division team. But yeah, they play them extremely well. And I think Mac Jones played really, really good football against a hard defense last week. So I think it's going to be a lot closer than we think. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by the Dolphins. I don't think it's going to be a 30-point game. But however, I do have the Dolphins winning. I think their offense is just a little too explosive for the Patriots to keep up with. But I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than what people think. I honestly think it might be like a 21-14 game, and I think the Dolphins will get out of there, maybe a touchdown ahead. But it's going to be. I'm excited to see how Tua and Tyreek Hill and McDaniels go about game planning against a legit top 5 defense in the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to be a really competitive game. Like it's going to be close down to the wire. I think people might not even expect how close it's going to be. I'm going to pick the Dolphins in a competitive game, though. I think they're a really good football team. Offensively, I think they can just prevail in the end through things. They're really good offense. They're going to put up some points, and I will say those Patriots uniforms that they're going to wear, the throwbacks on Sunday night, it's going to be a beautiful aesthetic, and they might win just off that, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be a close game, but I think you're starting, all the Dolphins receivers, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. I think you're starting Tua, honestly. I think he is solidified last week himself as a starter. You're starting Raheem Mostert, or sorry, not Raheem Mostert.
Oh yeah, you're
Well,
starting Mostert.
is he even playing this week? I heard
Yeah,
he hurt.
he was like limited in practice. I think he's going to play,
Oh,
but
okay. All
yeah,
right. For some reason, in my head, I thought he was ruled out, but you're
no,
probably
Jeff Wilson's the one that's out.
okay, definitely start Raheem Mostert. And then on the other side of the ball, you're starting Ramondre Stevenson, obviously. But who are you feeling confident other than Ramondre on the?
I like Kendrick Bourne. I 11 targets last week. It's intriguing. Like, not gonna lie, that's intriguing. 11 targets for Kendrick Bourne. I think I could start him in the flex this week just because the Patriots are gonna need to be scoring, so they're gonna be feeding Kendrick Bourne again. Juju's a little interesting. I feel like he's kind of touchdown or bust. I could easily see him getting a touchdown in this game. Honestly, like I feel like he probably will get a touchdown in this game. It feels like a Juju game, but I don't think I'm starting Devontae Parker if he even plays. He was out week one. I think Kendrick Bourne might be like the most exciting option for me, just target wise. I love targets.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Because it was like a 1 week fluke. I mean, I feel like the Patriots receivers are kind of inconsistent, but Kendrick Bourne does seem to be the guy with the biggest boom potential, and he did have the highest target share. So I do like that as a flex play. Kendrick Bourne. If he was on your waiver wire, I hope you did get him this week because I tried to get him. I couldn't get him either.
Yeah, I try to get him too. Not gonna lie. We'll get into the first of two Monday Night Football games this week. It is going to be the Saints who are going into Carolina to play the Panthers, and the Saints are 3-point road favorites. And I've lost confidence in the Panthers this season, man. I was really high on them. I love their roster. I love their coaching staff. I love the direction that this team is going, but I expected them to click better and quicker. I don't think they have any real X factor on this offense right now that's gonna kind of just win them games. Who's their biggest X factor rookie other than rookie Bryce Young? Miles Sanders, who doesn't have the Eagles' offensive line. Yeah, so it's I don't know. I just think that the Panthers team I might have been too high on it. It might have been the thing I was most wrong about all offseason. I think the Saints are a better team. I think with Derek Carr, they have a higher floor. They Jamal Williams is a solid running back. I Evero had the Panthers defense playing good, but I think the Saints are just a better team, man.
I completely agree with what you just said. You kind of just stole the words from my mouth. Saints are a better team. Panthers were definitely underwhelming. Like you said, there's who's Bryce Young really had to rely on to throw to? No one. I mean, and then the run game, they don't have a very good offensive line. They do. I mean, Miles Sanders is a pretty good running back, but he was good last year with the Eagles offensive line, which is the best offensive line in football. So yeah, they're just underwhelming. And like you said, the direction they're heading in is definitely the right direction, but I think they might be a year or two out before we can start really talking positively about the Panthers. And then on the other hand, I think the Saints, yeah, they'll just come into this game. They'll take care of business. It's not going to be too hard for them to win this game. Derek Carr looked good. Um, he's nothing special. We know what we're getting out of Derek Carr, but this Saints offense and team in general is more talented, and they'll end up winning this game.
Yeah, and I think both defenses are like solid. I think both defenses are pretty good, and I think the Saints defense just might be better, man. Evero is a really good coach, but the Saints defense with Dennis Allen, they played really good and stout against the Titans. So I think I was wrong about the Saints. I'll hold my hand up, and I'm going to pick them to win this game. I love their wide receiver trio with Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and then Rashid Shaheed. It's really fun. Hopefully, it can stay healthy because it's helping Derek Carr. Like you saw Derek Carr talking to Rashid Shaheed before the game-winning play, and he was just telling him to go run a go route, and he did, and it won him the game. So you like to see the Derek Carr chemistry already in his first game in New Orleans. I think there's good vibes there, and I think they could win this division.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The Saints, it's not a very tough division, but I agree with that take. I think they definitely could win this division.
All right, we'll get into our last game of the week, the last Monday Night Football game. It is going to be the Browns going into Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. 2 home games in a row for the Steelers, and the Browns are 2.5-point favorites on the road. The Steelers have won 20 straight Monday Night Football games at home. So are the Browns going to break that record? That's kind of like the thing that's kind of holding me back. Like going against that streak is pretty bold, betting wise. Can the Browns defy the odds and the history? I don't know. It'll be interesting. Though the way that the Steelers offense looked the last week, I think it's possible.
Yeah, let's just say preseason Kenny, I'm not having, as much faith as I did at one point. I think this Browns team, though, on the other hand, looked really good last week against a really good Bengals team and held them to 3 points. And so I kind of expect Deshaun Watson to even play. And it was a rainy game on top of that. So I mean, it was tough environment, it was tough conditions. They went in there, they showed that they're a rugged, mean football team. They got the superstars on defense. They got the superstars on offense. Myles Garrett looked fantastic. He's going to be in Kenny Pickett's face all night long. And I'm not sure if they have a good enough offensive line to really, protect Kenny Pickett against Myles Garrett. And then on the other side of the ball, Nick Chubb is just a juggernaut. Trying to tackle that dude is just unfair. You just keep feeding him the rock, he's going to wear out defenses. And so, I have the Browns taking care of business in this game. And they'll be 2-0 in the division, which is a fantastic way to start.
Yeah, and this Browns defense is so fun, man. Like I don't think people really took into consideration when the Browns defensive line last year, it was probably the second worst in the NFL behind the Cardinals. And they added Dalvin Tomlinson and Shelby Harris on the interior. They added Zadarius Smith on the edge opposite of Myles Garrett. And then they added Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, who had a great week 1 in his first game from the Texans. So like they added those 4 pieces on their defensive line along Myles Garrett. So now Myles Garrett's just going to have a complete defensive player of the year season. That's why I predicted that. I think that he's just going to be freed up. And as we saw in week 1, he's a monster. We saw him crossing over their center, doing basketball moves, just having fun. And the secondary, my favorite corner trio in the NFL right now, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Martin Emerson. It's so fun, man. I'm picking the Browns to go into Pittsburgh and win this game to break the 20 straight Monday Night Football games streak for the Steelers. It's unreal. It's hard to pick against the Steelers. I think this will be a really, really close game. Like all that hype about the Browns being said, I think this will probably be like a 3 to 6 point game, a really close one in Pittsburgh. But the ground and pound style for the Browns, it's a badass running style of football. Like they insert their dominance from the start of the game. Nick Chubb's probably the best running back pound for pound in the NFL right now, and Watson can get the job done. He showed that he can kind of use the momentum that defense and running game is giving him, and he can just use it and have a good run game, have a good complete some good passes, and he's a good quarterback. So I think this Browns team is gonna be really good this year, man.
Oh, 100%. I love it. And if you're still watching this late in the video, thank you. Comment, let us know that you're watching. We love it. We love to see it. But yeah, this is going to be an awesome week of football. This was a fun podcast. I'm excited. I'm excited Thursday as we're filming this late Wednesday night, Thursday night football tomorrow. I'm ready. I'm ready for another week of football, baby.
So fun just sitting on the couch watching on our Octo box, just all the games, Sunday ticket. It's so fun. It's back. All these games are just as good as the week one matchup. So it's going to be a really exciting one. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for the support. Like, subscribe if you liked. And yeah, thanks for joining, Josh.
Yes, sir.
All right. Peace, guys.
Peace.